Hey everybody, it's Matthew of Mr. Domestic. In this video, I am going to show you how to do fussy cutting and foundation paper piecing. Look. Ooh. Ooh. It's definitely something that will next level this technique of quilting and allow you to look at fabric a little differently than you probably already are. So if you're ready to conquer foundation paper piecing fussy cutting, I've got a few techniques and tips and tricks to show you. So before we get into the content, anytime you're enjoying this, make sure to give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Now let's get ready to have some fun together. This video is all about fussy cutting and foundation paper piecing. I'll show you a few ways that I've done it either presently or in the past that have worked, and hopefully one of these will work for you. So the first one, I'm going to use this template, which is part of the Patchwork Petals foundation paper piecing quilt, and I'm doing a sew along right now with Whole Circle Studio. And this is fussy cutting when there is one fabric, as you see right here, that is central, and it's the very first one. As you know, foundation paper piecing goes in order. This is G1, so it's the very first one. And so for me, I know that I'm using this in my pattern. I haven't made a decision of which way directionally that I want this to fit, but I know I want it to fit in there somewhere. Let me flip it back over. You saw what it looks like on the front, and this is one of the tricky things about foundation paper piecing is it's flipped, right? You're gonna sew on this stitch line. So I'm gonna maneuver, and since I'm using this Sharon Secret foundation paper, I don't need a light box, but if you are using regular paper, you might need a light box, and you can see it in my Notions video. I found one on Amazon for 30 bucks. So let's look to see which way I really like it. Ooh la la. I like it that. That's gonna be so awesome. So this is where the glue comes in. I'm not gonna use my sew-line glue for this kind of stuff. I'm gonna use just regular glue. And I just put a couple dabs on there. This is washable. It's totally gonna wash out, so no sweat. And then let me position this, right here. Oh, that's gonna be beautiful. Tweak it a little bit. And for the most part, unless like something really dramatic happens, then this is as far as you need to go. You can just trim around it perfectly if you want to, or not perfectly. I'm gonna go ahead and show you what I do here. And this one isn't going anywhere. I'm just gonna trim around it. This is the best practice for me. I like to just trim around each piece as I go and create that quarter seam allowance. It just makes it a lot easier for me whenever I position pieces in the future. I'm not gonna get those little itty bitty ones, but I'm just folding this one forward like this. And then this one is good to go, and I'm ready, set, go on stitching the other pieces. So that's the way that I fussy cut. Simply use glue, trim around the edges once it's applied. If you need to get a light box, this is the time you would really want one for this one to position it perfectly. But this is easy peasy, 1, 2, 3, good to go. Now, this is where it gets a little bit more complicated. And if you don't want to do the eyeball method, I'll show you that in there. But this is, I'm going to make 2 and 4 a print and 5 a print. So 1 is going to be a solid. I will go ahead and position 1. I like to go ahead and position it on a straight line and try to make it as close to 1/4 of an inch the first time. Making a mess right here. And even if I'm not fussy cutting, I still glue position my first one so that I just don't have to worry about it anymore. And that is an estimate of 1/4 inch seam. I'm gonna go ahead and fold this, do my add 1/4. If you don't know about this add 1/4 ruler, it is a game changer in foundation paper piecing. I didn't cut my finger. Okay, so 1 is ready to go. Oh. I just put some excess there. Didn't mean to, but I'm not gonna trim it. I'll just trim it all in the end. So this one, right? I think that this would look really neato-pedo put in there, right? So let me flip it back, and I kind of want to position it to where it's perfect, and that point is right in there, and it's central. I just think that's going to be cool, and you can kind of sort of see it, right? And it's kind of what I did before. That here, I'm just folding it. I didn't use glue. If you wanted to put a dab of glue so it doesn't move, you can. But I'm doing the same thing that I did before. And since I already created that 1/4 inch seam allowance by trimming after I did the first one, then this will fit perfectly in there. See? Doing the same thing. Unless you shake your table or sneeze on accident, then this should stay perfect. Okay. Is this one good? Is this one good? This one's good. Yay! And so here we go with this. And then one other thing that I do with this is I will go ahead and start the crease, even though I know it's a 1/4 inch, just so that I can eyeball it on the other side. Then there's that crease, and if I position it here, it should be perfect. And now I'm gonna take it over to my sewing machine and show you. Okay, so now I brought this piece over to Felicia. I have my stitch length set at 1.6, and I'm not sewing on this side. I just wanted to show you one thing to look for. Since you trimmed that 1/4 inch seam allowance there, if you wanna make sure that it's perfect, that's why I put the crease there. See how it lines up right there? You know it is good to go at that point, and you can flip it over and sew right here. Just make sure that the seam allowances are all matched up right there. Flip it over, and you are good to stitch. And then that's another best practice that I do. I always stitch a couple and then reposition it if I need to, just to make sure that it's all aligned. There you go. This one is done, and you're not going to see how awesome this is until I get the other one on, but I'm not going to do that in real time. As you can see, now that I've added this piece, ooh, fussy cutting magic. And I'm going to show you a different technique for this 4th one. And this is what I used to do a lot in the very beginning whenever I foundation paper pieced, was I would create a viewfinder. I do this in English paper piecing a lot, or I get an acrylic template, but essentially I'm going to create like something that I can see the fussy cutting with a 1/4 inch seam allowance around it. And so this is cardstock, like a thicker cardstock that won't get cut through very easily. And now I'm going to, it's number 4 that I want. So I'm going to go ahead and glue number 4 down. Right here, I'll go ahead and put this against an edge. And then I will cut a 1/4 of an inch over here and a 1/4 of an inch over here. And that is going to be the seam allowance. Right here. And that is the part that you want to be precise in this part, is the outside seam allowance, not necessarily this part in here. That one doesn't necessarily need to be precise. I'll cut that. We are good to go. Now I'm going to cut this out. And when I make one of these for a pattern, it generally will last the entire pattern. And then if you see yourself starting to trim off some of the edges, then you can make another one. It's easy, you still have more cardstock. So, cut a little more right here. Boom. Boom. Here. Ta-da! There's your little viewfinder. If you want to rip that off, you can. If you don't want to, you don't have to. And then this is the top. So for this goes like this, right? So what I want to do is use this viewfinder and find another beautiful thing. There you go. See? See how that's centered? And then you can use this to trim. You don't have to use a ruler. It's already there. That's why I like using a thicker cardstock instead of making a viewfinder with paper, because then I can just use that as the guide. And make sure to get the blade on the edge and don't push it. If you wanted to use a ruler for stability, you could. And there, that piece is done. And now, just like the other ones, there's a 1/4 inch seam allowance here. Take this, One thing I'm going to do here that I didn't do, this is just so that I can line it up just like I lined the other one up. Right here, go ahead and make that 1/4 inch seam allowance. Remember that even though that doesn't go beneath, it kind of makes an angle there. And I'll take this over to my sewing machine and I will stitch it up. Back over to Felicia. I've lined it up just to make sure that this looks cute. And I'm just going to trust that I did the right job. And so, because with that viewfinder, it's super duper precise. You don't have to worry. Once again, it's at 1.6 seam allowance. I stitch a couple, then I just make sure that it's all lined up. And I stitch the whole thing. And then look, whoa, that is perfect. It goes to the edge, perfect fussy cutting. Now I'm going to show you something that I do for the bigger one. And for this final section, I know that I want this in here, and I think that this and this will fit. So let me test it out, get it about right, just to make sure that this is right. So that's about how I would want it in there. So what I'm going to do, I kind of did this earlier, but I wanted to do it on a larger one just so that you could see it in case you weren't able to grasp it. So I'm going to center it right there. And whether this was an edge piece or not an edge piece, this would work the same. And there, it's good to go, right? So now I'm going to take a ruler and trim around. If this wasn't an edge piece, then I would be flipping it up to make sure that I get that 1/4 inch seam allowance. Right there. So this is good. And then now keeping it there, I'm going to flip it. The crease is already there. And then all that's left is this 1/4 inch seam allowance that I already have there. So I can just use that to cut as the guide. And then we're good. Boom, 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 shake the room. That's it. Ta-da! And just to show you that it fits, here you go. Boom! And then I would just flip it over. I'm not going to show you sewing this part, just because it's kind of repetitive, but then I'll just line this up and then stitch it right there on the line, flip it over, and it would be awesome sauce. So yay, fussy cutting and foundation paper piecing is fun. You can tackle fussy cutting and foundation paper piecing and next level this artistic, mind-blowing technique in quilting. So if you enjoyed this video, got a tip or a trick or a laugh or two, then make sure to give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Keep it positive, y'all. Mr. Domestic out.